Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about some quick tips for digital research. So we know a lot of you are starting work on your NHD 2021 projects on the theme of communication in history, the key to understanding. Now, keep in mind, the best resources that you have available to you are your libraries, your archives, your historical societies, right? They're going to have those primary sources that you need. They're going to have those books and articles that you need to do historical context and background information. But what happens when you can't get to those places? That's when we need to think about how to utilize online resources. So here are some quick tips on how to do that effectively for your NHD project. Our first topic will be mining Wikipedia. All right, let's talk about the website that is Wikipedia. We all know it. We've all used it. We've probably all fell down some very long rabbit holes clicking on things on Wikipedia. But it's not the best online source to be using for your NHD project. So there are some problems with Wikipedia. Number one, it's crowdsourced. So anyone can contribute and anyone can edit a Wikipedia page. Here's the problem with that. Because we don't know who exactly is contributing, we don't know if the information that they're providing is legitimate or accurate. And that's a problem. We want to make sure that when we're doing our NHD projects, we're considering historical accuracy. The other problem is that Wikipedia is not peer-reviewed. So when scholars write an article for a journal or they're working on a book for a publisher, they have their peers edit that work, right? We call that peer review. So you want to think about all of the times that you've been peer-reviewed. Maybe your teacher reviews your materials in class and gives you a grade. When you do an NHD project, you're reviewed by NHD judges, right? These are the ways that you're peer-reviewed. Wikipedia is not peer-reviewed like you are. So we want to keep that in mind when we're using Wikipedia, is that information is kind of out there, but nobody's really making sure to check that it's legitimate. So why talk about mining Wikipedia then? Well, there is a way to use Wikipedia effectively. So let's do a little kind of case study here. Say that my topic is the press and the French Revolution, and I need to learn more about the historical context and background information surrounding the French Revolution. So I'm going to go and I'm going to type in French Revolution. Of course, it's the first thing to pop. So here is the Wikipedia page for the French Revolution. And as we can see, we've got some pictures, we've got a lot of text that's going to tell us about the French Revolution. It'll, of course, have other things highlighted of important people, dates, and other materials that we can jump to. But again, this is crowdsourced information. It's not peer-reviewed. So this information could be accurate. It might not be accurate. But there is one really good feature about Wikipedia. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of a Wikipedia page, okay, you'll run into a section called References. And under that section, you're going to find the citations. So all of these are footnoted in the Wikipedia page. Now, if you keep scrolling past those footnotes, you get to a sources section. And this sources section is really great because it contains books that you can read about the French Revolution that are actually academic scholarly work. Take, for instance, William Doyle's The Oxford History of the French Revolution. William Doyle is actually a British historian who spent his academic career researching the French Revolution. So this may be a source that you want to check out in order to learn more about the background information surrounding the revolution. So if we scroll down a little more, we'll get to the section called Further Reading. And what is under here are all the different scholars that have contributed to the historiography of the French Revolution. And the historiography is basically how the narrative of the French Revolution has changed over time as different historians find new sources, make new arguments. That's what you're going to be looking for, to see what people have written about the French Revolution and how they've written about the French Revolution. So if we look through here, we'll find names like Jeremy Popkin, who's another French Revolution historian, and we'll be able to check out his work, which is a short history of the French Revolution, to help find good sources for us to review. So when you have a list like this of different books and authors, you want to employ a tactic that historians call biographizing. And what that means is if you don't know much about an author, you want to get their biography, right? Figure out where they earned their degree. Figure out if they are an authority on the subject that they're talking about. And so here's the easiest way to do that. You want to go to google.com, and in that search box, you want to type the name of the author. So in this case, let's use Jeremy Popkin as our experiment here. So I'm going to type in Jeremy Popkin. Okay, and the first thing that of course pops up is that Jeremy Popkin is a professor at the University of Kentucky, right? I know that he earned his PhD from the University of California, Berkeley, and that he has interests that include the history of the French and Haitian revolutions. So I now know that if I'm doing a project on the French Revolution, Jeremy Popkin is a scholar that might have really important information for me in his books. And you want to do this with different authors to make sure that you're finding legitimate sources from actual academics, whether they be historians, anthropologists, sociologists, or other scholars, right? Don't take any book at face value. Always biographize the author and see if you can figure out why they're writing the book and what their background is. Now, if you go back to that page, you'll also find different topics or geographical regions. So in order to know about the French Revolution, you might need to do a little bit of reading into European history. You might need to know about the politics and the wars that led up to the French Revolution. Again, you might also need to think about the economy, society, women, right? And other topics that may be influencing, right, what we know about the French Revolution that are going to help you create that NHD project. Now, if we keep scrolling, there's two other sections that are really interesting. So some Wikipedia pages contain a primary source section, which is really helpful because it'll show you some published source books and other materials that house primary sources that are related to the French Revolution. But there's also this really great external links section. So what's great about this external links section is that it lists different sites, digital archives, special collections that relate specifically to the topic that you're looking at. So right here under this, we have things like the Museum of the Revolution, right? So the Museum of the Revolution is based in France, but you can translate their page into English to help you, unless you know French. And this will give you all of their information, their exhibitions, major events, their collections, and what they say about the French Revolution. Now, if you go back to that page, we'll also see that there are some other materials on here from places like Stanford University, from the University of Pennsylvania, and even from the University of Alabama. So all of those are special collections and digital archives that house primary sources that are related to the French Revolution. So if we were to click on any of those, we would be sent to places like the French Revolution Digital Archive housed at Stanford University Libraries, or the collection at the University of Alabama, or to the Jean-Baptiste papers at the University of Pennsylvania. And from there, we can figure out what's available to us digitally, and if we're local, what we can go check out in those archives. So, this is how you really want to use Wikipedia, to dig in to the sources that they have in that referencing section and use it to find the secondary and primary sources that you need to help you craft an NHD project.